I like the boys and getting pissed and bitchiness. I mean, that's quite a good combination.
Yeah. I'm Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, a podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. Wilfrid Wood is a London-based sculptor who started his career building latex heads for the 80s classic TV show Spitting Image. He makes amazing, really amazing sculptures, often quirky busts of celebrities made of plasticine like Claire Balding, Wayne Rooney, and Simon Cowell. We caught up to discuss Kudos, a gay bar that was in Charing Cross, London. Now there is surprisingly little information about this bar online, so I can't tell you when it opened. But in amongst the lukewarm reviews on Yelp.com, somebody posted that the bar closed in 2014.
The tribe at Kudos was rice queens and potato queens.
For those that don't know, those are kind of broad terms for when you're a rice queen, you're a non-Asian person that likes Asian men. And when you're a potato queen, you're a non-white person who likes white men.
When you're sticky rice, you're Asian who likes Asian. And when you're mashed potato, you're white who likes white.
I'm learning new things this evening. This is exciting.
Yeah, there was... I don't know why gay culture sort of fragments itself up in this way so particularly. But there's some sort of temptation to do that. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't... Now there's bears and there's twinks and there's loads and loads and loads and loads of all these types which really exist. And you suddenly find... I know what happened to me, which was quite funny in a way, was that when I joined Grindr, which was probably, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something like that, I looked down the list and I suddenly realised I'm a dad. And it's not because I want to. I always assume that somebody sort of sets out to be a dad and they want to be a dad. But I suddenly, I don't fit into any other category. The only one I could be is a dad. So you suddenly find yourself in a category and you feel obliged to call yourself it.
Because that is really interesting as well. Like when you're a daddy, suddenly you have to be dominant, and
it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You look down the list and you think, well, that's all I can be, and then you slightly play up to your category, which is completely weird. I think it's almost sort of marketing speak or something like that. It's kind of marketing yourself, isn't it, in a way? Because obviously we're all a bit of a mix of all sorts of different... And we might be some other category that isn't even on the list. Or we probably are.
Which is why otters exist, really, isn't it? Like, I'm not a bear, and I'm not a twink, and I'm not...
Yeah, good point.
So we're like going right off topic. You asked to talk about Kudos Bar. What time period would you say that you most frequented the bar?
Probably sort of mid-90s just, or late 90s to about early 2010s, whatever you call them. We're in them. Yeah. So a kind of 15-year sort of period, I should think.
So quite a significant period of your life.
Yes, absolutely. From me being sort of mid-20s to early 40s, something like that.
Okay. And so what is it about that bar that made you want to talk about it?
Well, I thought it would be a good one for me to talk about, because I imagine nobody else that you are going to talk to would talk about it, because it was kind of tacky, strange sort of place. It wasn't at all arty or trendy, totally unlike the sort of bars that I might go to now, or that I might bump into you in, or that people talk about. Because it was in central London, it had that kind of almost touristy sort of feeling about it. And it was really a place where particularly older guys would meet younger Asian guys. But it was a kind of, I don't know, a kind of, it was very a disparate gang of people of all sorts of ages, and then quite a few people who just drifted in on their way back from the theatre, about to get a train from Charing Cross, I should think. So, but there were also a core of people that were very often there, and I could go there practically any evening and be fairly sure of bumping into 3 or 4 people.
You started going in the mid-90s. What drew you to that bar in the first place?
Well, I didn't know what was going on. The internet was really much less in existence. I think I was also shy and not really very out to many people. So I went to college at St Martin's, which was on Longacre then. So it was just down the road from there, although I never went there when I was at college. So I think I just very slowly and gradually found this odd bar where there were boys that I liked, and I didn't feel threatened or intimidated by people who were kind of cool or fashiony or more sophisticated. It was quite a non-intimidating, apart from sort of crappy basic bitchiness. It was quite an easy place to be, really, and it was quite an easy place for me to turn up there and actually be quite a fun person as part of this very motley collection of people that I used to see there. What I used to do quite often is go to Oasis, which is the sports centre, go for a swim there, quite sometimes after work. So I worked in central London for a while there, and then used to go down to Kudos with a bit of an empty stomach, had a pint of Kronenberg, which was like rocket fuel, and really got on quite a high almost, chatting people up, being quite young and, up for it, really.
I mean, you talked about it being an alternative to the more cool places or the places where you felt like you might be judged. How would you describe those venues at that time?
I don't really know what they were or where they were or anything. I mean, Dalston didn't really exist as a place. The other area where I went to was Vauxhall. I'd like to know where the cool places were. I never knew where they were. I never found them. I don't know now or then what the cool venues were, really. They were probably happening somewhere else. And I was too tentative and conservative in a way to approach them. When I say Dalston didn't exist, there wasn't, as far as I know, an equivalent place to go out. There was Central London and Vauxhall, and then going to Vauxhall, that was massive clubs with muscle Marys taking drugs. And that was really fun on occasion, but that was partly because of taking drugs. They weren't interesting or left field. They were Euro pumping house and loads of tops off, basic stuff.
And so what you were looking for in your nightlife was somewhere a bit more casual, a bit more fun, and a bit less pretentious.
I think I was just looking to hook up with people much more than a good venue. So I'd put up with any old shit.
Okay, and so the men then at the Kudos, what was it about them that set them apart?
I went through a bit of a phase of really fancying Asian boys. When I say Asian, there were all sorts, like Asian, Chinese, or Japanese, or Indian. Also, it was quite. I suppose it was quite international, really, and I quite liked someone very different from me. I think that was the main thing, really, that got me to go to a rather sort of obscure place like Kudos. And also, it's one of those things where you get in a habit. And it's easy, and you know the scene, and you've got people there that you'll know and you'll probably bump into. you get your local pub or something. I think there's something quite reassuring and nice about that.
You came out quite late,
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. I did. I had girlfriends. I had girlfriends at school. I had girlfriends at college. I slept with men occasionally, which I was very conflicted about, really. So yes, it took me ages to come out fully.
And so the first time that you'd gone to Kudos, had you come out at that stage?
I doubt it. No, I wouldn't have. Because it was a bit obscure and out of the way and everything, that might have been a reason why it held a certain attraction, because I would just be so unlikely to bump into anyone, or I felt completely independent, but in rather an exciting, free way, that I could just do whatever I liked. It was all very, very exciting. I think I kept up the excitement for quite a long time, of illicit thrill. It wasn't like rah, 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 I'm gay and everyone else is, and clap your hands. It was all a bit underground and a bit spooky and a bit, quite a fun but rather tense sort of existence. I've never been very strident about being gay, or very sort of... I don't think it's a particularly good thing. Not a bad thing either, but I don't think, ooh, it's great. I'm so glad. I mean, some people really do. I think, just like, I don't think it's great to be straight. It's just literally how I've either come out of the womb, or what. That's a massive debate. Whether you're born like it, or you acquire it in some sort of ways. But I've just always felt naturally really, really quite attracted to people of all sorts, and not had such rigid sort of views about being gay or straight or things like that.
And then, so your coming out late wasn't about shame then? It wasn't about kind of this...
I think it was partly. It's always something I still don't like to talk about, really, but bisexual people are really rejected by both sides, and I think it's a really tricky situation to be in. And people, if anyone says they're bisexual, people always assume it can't be true, you must be one or the other. And I've never really felt like that. I haven't had a girlfriend for ages now, 15, 20 years or something. And I'm fine, and I've got a lovely boyfriend and all that sort of thing. But I think women are pretty great as well. I don't have, in my heart, I don't see a big dividing line.
Do you not feel like there's been a bit of a shift in the conversation about bisexuality and bi-visibility?
There may be, but perhaps when you get older, you get slightly stuck at the point where things were most visceral. But also, I'm still not really very, very easy about it, because nobody's gonna throw their champagne in my face if I say I'm bisexual anymore. But I think people do think it's kind of more suspicious than being gay, and there's something like undiscriminating about it, and wanting to have it both ways, and kind of unreliable or duplicitous, or I don't know quite what it is, or just desperate. I think it's much easier to say I'm straight or I'm gay. Yeah. For me, it still is. Maybe someone in their 20s now wouldn't say that at all, and good luck.
So, what was the coming out process like for you generally? Was it reaction from family and friends?
In terms of family, I was trying to buy my first flat, and when I tried to buy my first flat, you had to get some sort of life insurance or something because of the mortgage. And when you did that, they asked you whether you'd ever slept with someone of the same sex, I think, which was to do with HIV, which was to do with life insurance. And because I was confronted on this form with this question, in some weird way, I thought, this is my cue to tell my parents. I presented it to them as a kind of question, in as much as I said to them, I've got this form to fill in. It's asking me whether I've ever slept with someone of the same sex, and I'm going to have to say yes. So in this weird sort of formal sort of way to do with filling in a form, I then told them that way, which, I mean, I've never told anyone this, apart from now. But, well, I mean, why would I? Nobody's really asked me how I ever came out to my parents, but that's how I did. So I found this weird, convoluted way of doing it. And my dad had a lot of gay friends, always, and was wouldn't say surrounded by gay people, but a lot of gay people around him, my upbringing and stuff like that. But I think at that sort of time, any parent just immediately thought, AIDS. My son's going to die of AIDS. No doubt it's going to happen tomorrow. He's probably already got it. It's just absolute panic. So they were really upset about it, which wasn't great. I would say it was mid-90s. So I was probably about 25 or something like that, or even a bit more. So it was all late, and especially compared to how young people come out now. My friends have got a 30 or no younger, like 12 or something year old boy, and he's now out and he's going to all the prides all around the country. I couldn't believe it, and it took me. I was in my late 20s before I came out to my parents and stuff.
Yeah, so there was that kind of initial knee-jerk reaction about, like, oh shit, he's going to get HIV, he's going to develop AIDS, he's going to die. What was that like to navigate? How long before the dust kind of settled on that initial reaction?
It was gradually years, but I don't think, because I'd had girlfriends and stuff like that as well, I don't think they probably really believed me. They probably thought I was just kind of trying to cause trouble in certain ways. It was never like, hooray, welcome new gay Wilfrid. It was like, this we're not even sure this is quite true. It was very fudged and unclear cut.
So you just kind of waded through the mud for a few years.
Yeah, just muddled through. And there was no need for me to sort of... I just think it's generally good to be who you are with your parents as much as you possibly can. But there's often lots of difficulties about it. So I just thought it was better that they know, because I didn't want to be hiding things. But it's not like then everything changed and we were all happy, or we talked about it all the time or anything. It was just there and fairly much ignored.
And so what about like your circle of friends at that time?
I was really cagey about it, but gradually, bit by bit. I remember the girlfriend of a very good straight friend of mine saying, "Why can't we meet your boyfriend?" And I said, "Oh no, you never." I don't imagine him being involved in that sort of way at all. Looking back on it, it was mad. I was terribly hung up about the whole thing and conflicted, really. Homophobia directed towards myself and shame. But I don't know why I should feel so. I don't really sort of worry about these things much anymore, and I feel fairly comfortable in my own skin, I suppose. I'd need a few major sessions with a shrink in order to disentangle what was really going on, because when I'm talking about it now, it seems quite strange that it was all so difficult. And I mean, it was a somewhat different climate and a different time, but not. It wasn't sort of Victorian Britain. There were plenty of gay people around, and it wasn't such an unusual, especially since there'd been lots of gay people around in the family. I come from an arty family, so the gay people around all over the place. I don't know what was quite going on with me, quite honestly.
But I mean, there's no one way of doing things, and there's no roadmap, and there certainly weren't tons of examples of the process of coming out and the things to think about and the things to consider. So it was a bit murky, I suppose, in your early 20s, and by your mid-20s, this was the period when you started going to Kudos. Do you remember your first time there?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I used to go to a club called the Long Yang Club that was in Heaven for a while, just looking around, astonished and kind of wide-eyed at the possibilities and all these amazing looking people and stuff. And from there, I probably gradually found Kudos and found my way there somehow.
And so then, if you can't remember your first time, do you remember your first impressions?
I was probably really excited and very scared. I was very scared of going. I hardly dared step into a gay venue. God knows what I thought was going to happen. But yeah, I was terrified of it. So I was there very excited and very nervous, even in my mid-20s, which sounds almost pathetic, but is true.
Was it a venue that you just went to on your own, or were there groups of friends that you would go with?
Well, I nearly always went there on my own, and very often left with other people. Either like I picked someone up, or I went there. We then went somewhere else, like Heaven, which was then at the Astoria, or the Edge. We went to occasionally in Soho Square. Once it was closing time, and there were a bunch of us who were ready to go off somewhere else.
What was it? So the other thing I was going to ask, was it quite a cruisy space? We talked before about rice queens and potato queens. Is that why everyone was there, just to get off?
But largely, yeah, it was very cruisy. But I think I pretty much imagined that most bars were much more cruisy then than they were now, basically because Grindr didn't exist. So everyone does their cruising on Grindr. So that was the only chance of meeting people. So yeah, it definitely was. You always had your eye out.
What are your picking up tips, and what was your approach to it?
Whoa. Well, I mean, I can't, I'm not being overly modest, but I can't survive on fantastic good looks. So I would have to be nice and fun. So that was my only way of getting anywhere, was to be enthusiastic. And it's flattering to listen to people. This is my... or what I remember somebody telling me, or I read or something absolutely years ago, was that it's seductive to actually listen to people. So I think that's my advice. If anyone really needs my...
So you just smiled and nodded at people. Is that your approach?
Well, no, hopefully to be fun and to join in, but it flatters people to take them seriously, even if they're good-looking idiots. If they're great-looking idiots, they probably love the flattery of my very direct, sincere attention.
What was Kudos like physically from the outside, and what was it like when you went in?
It was pretty tacky. It had a slightly expensive veneer, but you knew it was basically tasteless and tacky underneath. So. Yeah, nothing good about the interior at all. No, horrible, like sort of fluffy walls next to a mirrored area next to a bright pink. It's kind of like clashing, awful 90s interior decor.
Okay, so I walk into the venue and I'm just assaulted by clashing fabrics and textiles. Where is the bar? Is there a downstairs as well?
Well, yes, there is a downstairs.
Like, was downstairs more of a dancing area, or was it upstairs, or?
It's quite a small place. I wouldn't have thought that downstairs was maybe a bit more of a dancey sort of area, but it wasn't really a dancey sort of bar. It was more of a boozy, chatty bar. And there were kind of little sort of, not cubicles exactly, but kind of set bits where you could kind of sit and be a little bit private. Then there was a kind of separate bit next door, but nothing remarkable. I mean, it was quite small, presumably partly because it was outside of Soho, where there are quite a few of those sort of bars, and presumably the rents are massive, so there wasn't much room for kind of expanding. You were pretty tightly cropped in.
Sorry, so just going back to what you were saying before about the clientele, what you've just talked about there is that in Soho and at that time, were tons of gay spaces, and this was kind of out of the way of all of that, but on the way to Heaven. And so you've talked about lots of people who may be going to the bar for a drink before they get to Charing Cross to then take their train to home. Did that mean there was lots of kind of businessy people and after work kind of crowd?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Not lots, but quite a smattering of those sorts of people that you would be less likely to see in the middle of Soho. Yeah, and also the typical kind of pissed girls with their gay friends at the end of a night, 10:30, sort of rolling in. It was quite round the corner from a pub called Halfway to Heaven, Does that still exist? Yeah. Anyway, that's even worse place, but that was the sort of another place that people would drop into on the way to heaven, called Halfway to Heaven, literally, from Soho.
I have to say, I'm loving this interview because most people that I talk to are like, oh, I love this venue, and looking at it with rose-coloured glasses, and you're like, yeah, it was a dump. It was a bit of a shithole.
I don't think I've ever had that before or since. A place where I can turn up and almost definitely bump into people that I know. And if everyone's willing, you can have quite a good time with a couple of beers with all sorts. I mean, I met weird people like political journalists or sort of policemen. You know, you bumped into all sorts in a place like that you wouldn't in Dalston now. You know, you'd meet loads of great fashion students, but it'd be much more of a closed scene, really. And somewhere like Kudos, it could be a soldier or someone who drove a bus. You'd hardly ever meet arty people.
And I guess that's kind of what we have lost in lots of gay spaces, because sometimes, you know, especially outside of big cities, where there is one gay bar and that's the only option that you have, that's where just people from all kind of walks of life and all different backgrounds and careers come together. And I guess, when you're talking about a venue that's in central London, likely to pick up lots of tourists because of where it is, likely to pick up lots of people who are getting a drink in before they go home on their train back to God knows where people commute to.
But back a little while ago, you all had this amazing thing in common, which was being gay. And now that it's on the whole in this country almost completely easy to be gay, you know, you don't have this common enemy of everybody else, which is great for bringing people together. You know, it's a very tricky subject, and I don't want to be saying that, you know, any sort of oppression is a good thing, but there are certain elements to having a common enemy that are fun. Yeah, it did bring people together in a way that you don't find now, as far as I know. But then, of course, the complicated thing about talking about any of this is that not only have times changed, but I've got older. So I'm talking with older, perhaps, insight into how things were then, but also I'm not part of a young scene now. So not only has the scene changed, but I've changed. So it's quite difficult to know how objective one is being.
Because I think that's the beautiful thing about these conversations, is that people kind of get to reconcile who they are currently with who they were then, and reflect on decisions and circumstances. Do you remember hearing about the bar closing?
Yes, I do, and I couldn't believe it. I think it was one of the first gay bars that I knew of to close down, and I absolutely couldn't believe it because it had been a total mainstay of my life. But it coincided. It happened in my early 40s, like when I was about 41 or 42, and it was a really difficult period of my life. It was my midlife crisis. I remember I spoke to a friend of mine who's a doctor, and I said, I'm lonely and I'm drinking too much and I'm going out. And I said, it's almost like a midlife crisis. And she said, well, what do you think a midlife crisis is? And it was amazing to hear that, because it's so funny how you can be in it and not thinking you think everyone else has midlife crises. And it was great that she said that. I suddenly thought, well, this is what it is, and I'm having one. But it coincided with that. Because I started all this late, I kept it going all through my 30s. I took too many drugs. I went out too much. I drank too much. I slept with too many people. All of that in my 30s rather than my 20s. And I hit early 40s and suddenly just got a little tiny bit too old to keep doing that. And it was really difficult to wean myself off it. And it was really difficult to get out of going to Kudos 2 or 3 times a week. But I had to, because the bloody thing closed down, which was actually good for me, but it was an awful shock. But it got me out of a pattern of overdoing it.
So you were still regularly going at the time that it shut?
Yeah, I was. Once, twice a week, maybe, something like that.
Do you remember your last night there?
No, because it wasn't like, ooh, this is the last night. I didn't know.
So it just closed suddenly? One day it was there, one day it was gone?
Yes, exactly. No build-up or anything. Yeah, it just gone. I couldn't believe it.
And so as a result of it closing, are there people that you lost contact with?
Exactly. Because there are lots of people that I wouldn't see, basically drinking buddies, you could describe them as. I didn't have much in common with them other than that. So, yeah, I've lost touch with, I would say, everyone from that scene.
I have a question that is very cheesy and I ask everyone.
Yeah, go on.
If you could go back to that time when you first started going and have a conversation with yourself, what would you say?
Oh, dear, that's really, really difficult, that sort of question. When you say that, I immediately think, do I have any regrets? Which I think it's impossible to have. I probably have general advice for life. I'd tell myself to have a slightly higher self-esteem. My boyfriend now told me the other day that I always think people have got a bad opinion of me. It's a bit like sitting in the psychiatrist's chair, so that's not really got anything to do with that. But I would tell myself, your lovely boyfriend in the future will tell you, even 25 years on from this, that you have this idea that other people have a bad opinion of you, which they probably don't. So just cut that out now and enjoy things and feel a little bit warmer inside, not like you're always doing the fucking wrong thing. So something like that I'd tell myself. But in terms of going to Kudos, there were aspects of it that were shit and aspects of it that were really fun. And it's just the odd way that my and other, all our lives, all these little influences that make us who we are. And I don't regret anything, really.
Do you have fond memories of going to Kudos? Do you have your own stories or photos that you want to share? Then reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and pretty much everything other than TikTok, because I've not got my head around that yet, with the username KAndersonMusic. And you can find out more about Wilfrid by following him on Instagram. His profile name is Wilfrid Wood Sculptor. Wilfrid is spelled Wilfrid. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record. Never gets easier saying that. I've been writing songs about queer spaces and the people who lived their lives there, and we'll be releasing the songs over the next year. You can hear the first single, which is called Well Groomed Boys, and is also the theme song for this episode. And it is available to stream and buy online on iTunes and on Spotify and all those places. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to hear more, please do subscribe. It would also make a huge difference if you were able to leave a review or share news about the podcast on social media or with your friends. Thank you for listening today. My name is Kay Anderson, and this has been Lost Spaces.